All right, we are live. Good evening, afternoon, morning, whichever part of the world you are in. Welcome to Goals Driven Life YouTube channel. I'm Ravi, your host today. At Goals Driven Life channel, we cover topics on how to design a life of our dreams, how to. All right, we are live. Good evening, afternoon, morning, whichever part of. I'm sorry about that. I got feedback from my YouTube, the other YouTube channel that was on my browser. Restart again. As I said, welcome to Goals Driven Life YouTube channel. I'm Ravi, your host. And on this channel, we cover topics on how to design a life of our dreams, how to set and chase empowering life goals, and how to live better. Our mission is to help people achieve their life goals. And also on this channel, I interview inspiring personalities who have been able to design their lives beautifully. Before we proceed, I would like request listeners to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss out on valuable content in the future and some amazing guests that are there scheduled for the coming weeks. And let me quickly share with you that I will also be doing some ebook giveaway. So I have 2 ebooks that I had written in the last few months, and I'm going to give them away. They're priced around 900 for both the ebooks. Let me just share information about that quickly, and then all right. So I wrote 2 books. Recently, I completed 15 years industry experience, and as I spend a lot of time with youngsters, I thought, let me bring together 50 insights that I have learned about managing a career. I have had transitioned my career from technical writing into product management, and that was a big life lesson for me on the experience. So I shared that on 50 insights of managing a career, and also how to boost your career and business by picking worthy mentors. I wrote these 2 ebooks. They're there on my Gumtree, but I'm giving them free to all of you who are subscribed to this channel. Just DM me on Instagram, Goals Driven Life, and I will send you ebook copy right away. All right, so why am I excited about interviewing the guest today? I often ask people over the years, is life happening to you, or are you making life happen? Making life happen is proactive, taking charge of how you imagine your future and designing your life according to that vision. Our guest today makes life happen. Let me give you a glimpse of a creative and beautiful life he has built over the years, and his name is Kiruba Shankar. Kiruba Shankar is the CEO of Breathe Digital, earlier called Business Blogging, a social media and digital marketing firm. Right from the first day of work, he has been in the digital space and now has 24 years of experience. He has co-founded F5 Technologies that focuses on open source web development. Prior to his entrepreneurship role, he was associate director of Sulekha.com and a senior manager at Sifi. He has authored 5 books: Copyright and Left, Wikipedia Beginner's Guide, Crowdsourcing Tweet, Unconference, and First Book. In fact, yesterday I was looking through a YouTube channel and there was this girl who was reviewing First Book. I don't even know if Kiruba knows about this. So Kiruba is a technology columnist and has authored tech columns at the New Indian Express, Business Standard, Financial Express, and others. He's a passionate podcaster and currently hosts 3 podcasts: the Movers and Shakers podcast in collaboration with India's leading business newspaper, the Hindu Business Line. He focuses on interviewing the global leaders and CXOs. The First Book podcast is the world's first podcast specifically for aspiring authors, where Kiruba interviews global best-selling authors. His latest podcast project is the Global Speaker, where he interviews the world's best professional speakers. Kiruba is also a global professional speaker, having given over 700 talks across 21 countries. He specializes in taking on digital excellence, primarily on how organizations can better leverage digital for improving the sales, marketing, and reputation. He is the founding president of the Professional Speakers Association of India under the aegis of Global Speakers Federation. Kiruba is passionate about teaching. He's a visiting faculty at Great Lakes Institute of Management near Chennai, and Bharatidasan Institute of Management at Trichy. He has lectured on digital and social media at IIM Kozhikode, IIM Bangalore, IIT Madras, and Asian College of Journalism. He blogs on interesting experiences in his life at Kiruba.com, and Business World magazine once ranked his blog among India's top blogs. That's not enough. There are a multitude of other projects that he has not yet expressed. If you explore his life, go back to his life, he has built a lot of projects. We are going to talk exhaustively about his projects. One of the interesting ones that I want to pick it up is he built a 13 acres of self-sufficient organic farm called Waxana Farms. One of the many projects he has pursued that has caught my fancy, and I'm going to ask him specifically about that as well. And this one is the Discomfort Challenge, where he pursues a life list of uncomfortable goals like appearing for a stand-up gig, which he actually did. And I'm going to also ask questions on that. So that's Kiruba for you, and please join me in welcoming him. Hi, Kiruba. Welcome to Goals Driven Life YouTube channel. How are you doing today?
Hey, Ravi. It's awesome to be on your show. So fantastic. I must tell you that has just gotten into the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest bio ever read.
It's all right.
And can I please request a copy of that, because I want to give it to my mother-in-law. She never thinks high of me, so it's very, very useful.
I'm sure your parents and your parents-in-law all are proud of you, of all that you have achieved. And I think I've told you earlier that I've followed your career since beginning. I think you were also a technical writer, so it seems so you were sort of a role model for me on how to transition careers and live the life of your dreams. And that's exactly what we are going to cover today. So as I said, I'm inspired by your life, and just as I'm inspired by my previous guest, Rajesh Sethi, and Rajesh Sethi's mission for life is bringing ideas to life with love. And I'm going to ask you your mission in some time, but you seem to be doing the same, picking out interesting projects one after another and weaving a beautiful and colorful canvas of life. Now, in my short life that I have understood, freedom and independence is something we all crave for. Even though I work in a great company in a great country like Germany, there's always this craving to have freedom and independence. And when I see you globetrotting, speaking all over the world, running your own company, writing books, building projects, I'm sure all this did not happen automatically. And then, I mean, you have intentionally and meticulously crafted this creative life and lifestyle. And so that's what, when most times when we see people like them, we think that we only see the results and not the process and the rigor and the hard work and the sacrifices behind it. So today, in this next 90 to 100 minutes, I want to take this opportunity to learn from you, get into your mind and learn from you how you did that. What life choices did you make? How did you plan your life in general? And not to mention all the personal sacrifices and the hard work and the grind and the anxiety and stress. I'm sure this is all part of the package. I would like to know from you. So let me begin by asking Kiruba, how did it all start? What were your early influences that shaped you to become the person that you are today? And what shaped you to be a doer of projects? Were they books? Were there influences? Were there people, role models? Or were you always wired that way?
Yeah, it's a great question to start with, Ravi. One of the things that I've realized very early in my life is that people are respected for the things they do, not necessarily for the things they consume. So let me give you a couple of examples. There is really no award for watching movies. However, there is Oscar awards for people who make movies. There's no award for listening to X number of songs, but there are Grammys given to great creators. There are no awards for reading books, but there's the Bookers of the World awards for authors. So clearly, the world respects doers or creators, right? Your show is a classic example of that. Ravi is a standout example because you wanted to get better at life. You wanted to really become passionate about about personal development, and you're doing the right thing by creating a brand and then inviting other people to come onto your show and share. And not only are you benefiting directly, but you're really making this beneficial for a wider audience. And I think that's in my sense, these are the kind of people that I admire, I look up to, and I have respect for. So I think maybe subconsciously, I don't recollect one single incident that really triggered my thought, but overarchingly, I've seen that people who do are the ones who are really respected. Um, One person comes to my, I come from a little picture postcard village near Pondicherry. It's called Sulam. And I distinctly remember very early in my life that there's a very well-to-do family. And I later got to understand the reason why the family is really well-to-do is because of this one gentleman who's the patriarch, right? I mean, he's the head of the family, and he would cycle his way to the farm, which is a few kilometers away, wake up at 4 o'clock, really get his hands dirty. But I've always seen in villages that if you're a landlord and if you own large parcels of land, you would typically wear on white and white, white shirt and white dhoti, and there's a person who's holding an umbrella for you. You just go and supervise. But he, even at the ripe old age, he would just get himself involved. And I mean, that really caught my attention. So there are multiple such examples of how people have inspired me. But one thing I've very clearly understood that doing is far better than just consuming.
Right. So at what age did you? I'm sure there was formative years when the idea played in your mind, and then it grew stronger, maybe, and then you wanted to get out of the corporate race and build something of your own. When did that seed get planted, and what was the process, and when did it mature to the point where you took the ultimate decision to leave your first job?
Yeah, I'm definitely sure that this did not happen very early. It did not happen in my school days. It did not happen in my college days either. Usually, for people, that's where the seed of your lifelong pattern really starts to set in. But I don't think it really happened. One critical moment I remember is when I joined this company called Sifi, and I was instrumental in starting. Uh, the rowing team. So Madras has this very prestigious uh, boat club called the Madras Boat Club. It's about 160, 170-year old, steeped in tradition, and they have one regatta called the MNB Regatta, the Merchants and Bankers Regatta, and it's a very very prestigious race amongst corporate companies who come and row. And I took the initiative to start a team and to build a team, and we participated. And one of the things I started to realize that as I built that team together, I there is so much about life, about um, achieving, about getting the best out of your teammates, um, about the satisfaction of going and winning. I learned so much out of that one single thing. I mean, this is really more like a hobby, right? This is not professional. You're working in a company, but this is a kind of a sporting activity that you do on a side. But I received tremendous satisfaction, and because we really enjoyed ourselves, right? Not only did we get fit, not only did we become healthy, but there was this adulation because we went on to, even now in the history of the 170 years of Madras Boat Club MNB Regatta, we hold the title for the maximum consecutive years of winning the title. I think we won this 5 years in a row. So it was those things that really gotten so much joy. And I think that's where the trigger really happened. There could be multiple triggers, but this one single thing that I distinctly recollect. So yeah, actually getting your hands dirty and going and doing things is something that I thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah, and since then I've made this in my life mantra. I did a similar thing that what you're doing, Ravi, is that I had this. this my life goal for wanting to become an author, because every time I go to a Hikim Botham's bookstore, I go to a landmark bookstore, I look at all these books, and I read those books, and I almost instantly I would have a very deep respect for the author. Now, I've never met, seen, or interacted with the author, but the fact that the book is out there, my respect goes out to that person. I said, hey, why can't I be that person? But for tremendously long years, and I think for about 9 years, I absolutely miserably failed at writing a book. I gave multiple attempts at everything. So I did what you're doing right now, which is I reached out to a lot of these authors and asked them, hey, at one point in time, you were just like me, right? You hadn't even written a word. You were just aspiring to write a book, but you went on to write and you went on to make that a best-selling book. How did you make that happen? I think just going out there and really seeking knowledge, and you'd be surprised that the world is a very nice place. People are willing to help you out. And then I went on to write my book, and then now I've got my sixth book is out will be out soon. So I think those are things that is really looking from others, learning from others, actually getting things done, doing things, even if it means failing multiple times. Those have been the ones that have really shaped me, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you. That was quite inspiring. However, what keeps you going? I mean, I have always seen you running multiple projects. There's always something exciting. If you miss Kiruba for a few months, you are missing something exciting, and then you come back to him, and then he's doing something new. So, what drives you keeping setting new goals, doing new projects? What is that source of motivation? What is that fire that fires your coal?
What fires my coal is things that really pushes me out of my comfort zone, Ravi. And that's where I've really seen feel satisfaction. So, for example, I'll give you an example. So I started a project called the Discomfort Project, which you mentioned as well. And I have this long list of things that I want to do, but these are necessarily not enjoyable, nor are they easy. But that's what makes it exciting. So one of the challenges that I took was last year, I decided that I will never eat at the same restaurant twice, which means if I go to a restaurant and dine there once, I will never go back to the same restaurant, which pushes me that the next time I'm taking my family out or going out with a colleague, I'm forced to think of another restaurant. And this helped me discover some amazing places. And the reason I took on this challenge is because I was falling into a groove. I would only go to restaurants that is conveniently located near my home, or I would go to restaurants where I've already dined before and I like the ambience and the food. So I was like falling into that kind of this very mundane pattern which I wanted to break. But ever since I took on this challenge, I started to discover some amazing restaurants, and I found that my life got a little bit more spicier, a little bit more tastier. And so this year in 2020, I took on the challenge, and this is before COVID, I must say, that not only will I not dine in the same restaurant twice, I will actually push the bar even higher, and I will not even eat the same dish again. So I want to tell you the seriousness of this decision, which means that if I've eaten chicken biryani once, for the rest of 2020, I cannot eat chicken biryani again. Okay, does that give you the seriousness of this decision? That's what made this even more interesting, right? Now I'm really gunning for newer variations and newer dishes, and wow, I mean that really brought me a lot of joy. I think trying to do different things, dirtying my hand at it, like for example, look at you. You are doing this show on StreamYard, right? And this is something that the platform was very new to you, but you hacked it through. You figured out the best way. You got a professional version. You invested in it. You figured a way how to connect this to YouTube. And right now on YouTube, this show is happening live. And that's because you have this learner's mindset and you're not afraid to tinker around, and that's what makes this exciting, right, Ravi? So I think it's the same thing. So try and do different things, but pushing yourself outside the comfort zone is something that I would that really makes it happy for me. Yeah.
And but why do you do this? Why do you keep pushing yourself outside the comfort zone? Why the discomfort challenges? I would like to know this. What is the motivation behind it? Is it the fear of falling into a rut and not experiencing the new? Because I'm not. The other thing that I wanted to compliment you was I saw you, like I used to follow you earlier, and then after a few years I did not follow you, and then a few weeks before I started looking at your videos again. Then you looked to me just as fresh as 10 years ago. I saw that it was a Malaysian, you were in Malaysia and you were interviewing this young entrepreneur, and you had this thick, bouncy black hair, and you always reinvent yourself, and there's always certain freshness to your content. It goes to show that you are always pushing the boundaries. What is that reason? Is this because you want to reinvent yourself every day?
Yeah, you correctly said about falling into a rut, and rut is no fun, right? Second, normal is boring, Ravi. It's easy to say. It's also a very cliched sentence, right? But I've noticed that when you do something out of the ordinary, it makes it just a little bit more fun, and the slight butterflies in your tummy, which is the thought of failure or the thought of, hey, will people ridicule me, that kind of pushes me into that challenging zone, saying that what the hell, what have I got to lose? Let me give it a shot. Let me prove others wrong. Let me prove myself wrong, right? So those are things that the joy really comes in. And I would see, last year I took on this challenge. I was very embarrassed with my beer belly, and I have to tell you that it's really embarrassing punch that I had. Did that make me feel good? No. Then I asked myself, so what would make me feel good? I'd say a flat tummy would make me feel good. Great, there lies in the answer. So shall we give it a shot? And I have to tell you that never in my life have I ever dieted. Never in my life have I really made an attempt at losing weight. But to cut the long story short, in 6 months' time, I lost 18 kgs.
Wow.
And there was a very visible difference, right? And people would always look at me, for people who haven't seen me for a while, they would say, holy cow, Kiruba, you've lost, I mean, losing 18 kgs is visible. You can't miss it. And people would always ask, how the hell did you do that? And here's the interesting thing, right? People automatically assume that I would have gone on a strict diet. People automatically assume that I would have starved. People automatically assume that I would have hit the gym and I would have really slogged my ass out. People would have automatically assumed that I would have taken these supplements and tablets and things. Actually, you know what? It was one of the most enjoyable ways how I lost weight. I went and joined badminton, a sport that I really loved as a kid, but I haven't played for the next, I don't know, some 30 years. I picked up the sport and realized that I completely fell head over heels. And every day I would play for about 2 hours. I would come absolutely drenched. I made some small adjustments towards food, that I increased the number of vegetables and reduced rice. But every day I was really having delicious, really tasty food. And I wasn't a big fan of sweets. So I just cut down on very, very consciously on my sugar intake, and which wasn't a big deal anyways. So by doing very little change, but by enjoying myself, by having fun, I was able to achieve something that I was happy about, which is having a lean body and no pot belly. So I think that's where the fun lies. So taking on a challenge and then gamifying it and making it really fun. Yeah, so that's what really ticks me.
So Kiruba, my question to you again is, not everybody is able to do this. So
Hmm.
is this in your genes? Are you wired differently to be to able to chase these goals, or have you built this muscle over the years, and you think anybody can do it, or are you different? Because there is a question here from Pranita, who is a live audience. She says, what about the stress that constant pushing out of comfort zone gives you? How do you manage the stress? And also related to this is about laziness. Okay, we all set goals, but we all fail. Okay, the comfort of the couch and a Netflix. Even
Yeah.
me, I consider myself a little more motivated. I'm gifted that way, but still, the comfort of the couch stops me from going for a run, even if I have set it as a goal. So, what is it about you, or do you think are you gifted specially, or anybody can do this?
Yeah, I'm certainly not gifted. Anybody can definitely do this. I want to take on Pranita's question. I think it's a remarkable question. Yeah, sometimes when you start taking on these projects, and there is an inherent pressure for you to do. So, for example, if you're writing a book, holy cow! Now I have to now finish writing the book. Oh, now there's a marathon I'm training towards. To oh, now I must really train hard and really go there. So there are two ways how you can look at it. One is the stress automatically comes, but it only depends on how we really react to that. And the best way that I've seen to overcome stress is realize the fact that you're doing this not to impress anyone else. The minute you start to look at it that you're doing this only for yourself, you're doing this because you're challenging yourself. There is absolutely no compulsion for you to win at doing this. There is absolutely no compulsion for you to go and impress upon others. The minute that outside factors are removed, and then it becomes an intrinsic joy, and you're only doing it for yourself. And so, I mean, that kind of makes it a lot more interesting. Yeah. So when you're doing it only for yourself, I think there's this, and it's also important for you to be a little soft on yourself, and pressure is no good. So that's number one. The second way how I deal with the stress, and you were asking about the wiring the DNA, and let me tell you one aha thing that really changed my life. There is no that there is joy in the journey, and it's not the destination that brings in the joy. I think that completely changed the way how I look at my passion projects. Let me give you an example. I'm someone who I found that I like things that are very antique and unique, right? Antique and things that are very old. So it would, every time I look at a colonial bungalow, this 150-year-old bungalow that the Britishers built, or these old Chettinad homes that the ancestors built, I would almost inexplicably, I would have this joy of looking at them. Consequently, it would also break my heart that when I see these bungalows get torn down because there is a high-rise office building that's going to come in that space. Now, there's nothing I can't do. I can't go and protest. I can't go and ask people to stop. You can't stop the march of development. So, what's the next thing I can do? Is at least I can visually record these beautiful buildings for posterity. So, I started a project called the Colonial Bungalows Project. It started as a Facebook community, and I took on this mission of capturing these beautiful buildings, not just in India, but in all Southeast Asia, wherever the British colonies were. And I started to realize I can't do this on my own, and I turned this into a community project. Now, and I made the mistake of telling people that I'm going to publish a coffee table book with all the pictures in. And it put me in an uncomfortable position because now I'm committed. I've told people in. And somehow I didn't relish that pressure. So instead, what I said was, to hell with the book. It's the pictures that count, that matter. It's the community that matters. So now the Facebook group is a living, breathing organism where we continue to update this going forward. Now, once the pressure of that book went away, it became a lot more joyful project. Now, every time I go out on a speaking trip to any of the British colonies, ex-British colonies, I always take 2 days extra, and I go out there and seek out these buildings and go and explore. Now, because this is just one add-on, and it's a lifelong project, right? So this is not something that I hope to finish. So now I'm in no hurry to really finish, and that made it a lot more enjoyable. So doing things over a long period of time, but doing little things on a weekly or a monthly basis, it's kind of like keeping the fire. You took the beautiful example of what fires your coal. Is that coal is simmering and there is that little spark and fire. It is not a blazing fire, but something that is smoldering in the background. So the idea is to keep as many projects that are smoldering in the background. So that's the trick that I've found, right?
Do you also spend some time with yourself to ensure that the fire is burning, or it's there forever? For me, I must say that I have to spend some time to measure whether my motivations are going down, or if I have to check with other people who are doing great stuff, so that I do not lack that motivation in me. So just to temper myself to see if I'm going strong or not. Do you have such rituals that you spend with yourself, or maybe spending time with people who are more accomplished or doing more than you?
Yeah, actually, both these things is something that I consciously do, Ravi. The first one is that every year I sit down and make my bucket list. Bucket list are things that we want to do before we die. And every year I start a fresh sheet and I would write down. Now, bucket list we have only one life, but yet I get onto this habit of writing down the things, because then if you start to compare your bucket list every year, you will notice that there is a pattern. You will notice that there are some things that have continued to remain consistent. Like one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to start an organic farm. I come from a family of farmers, but over a period of time, things changed drastically. But in my heart, I wanted to do this. Then I consistently saw that over the last 15 years, that the farm remained a very consistent item. Wanting to author a book remained a consistent item. So if that has made it to the list on year basis, it means it is absolutely worth pursuing, because it is not something that you just came up. It is not the next shiny blingy thing in your mind. It is something that has been residual in your mind and in your heart for a long time. So that's something that I would really go by. Yeah. And the second thing, what you rightly said, Ravi, is also to, when you surround yourself with amazing people, almost subconsciously your life gets better, right? So I have this book. It's, when I say it's a book, it's in an Evernote item. It's a book where I list down what's called it's called the inspiration book, right? So what is the one thing that I really admire, or that I really find it very interesting in the people that I meet? So here's the catch. It's the people I meet. These are not people who are big achievers. These are not people who are the who's who of the world, but on an everyday basis, in different touch points in our life, whether it is work, whether it's family, whether it is some conference that we go, or the podcast that we do, what is the one thing that I really look up to? Like, for example, one of the things that I wrote down in that inspiration book is that, hey, Ravi reached out to me to do this podcast. And I listened to your very first episode with Rajesh Sethi, a person that I really admire as well. And I noticed that when I was watching through that 1 hour podcast, I noticed that there were a few annoying self promotional things from StreamYard that came in. So I took a screenshot of it and I sent it to Ravi saying that, hey, Ravi, I'm very happy that you're interviewing me. But I noticed that in the previous podcast, this particular thing that came out is that any way that you can have that removed because it will enhance the viewer experience. And voila, look at what Ravi did. He took that advice. He went and bought a professional version of StreamYard. He figured out how to remove it. And now it's look at the branding that you see across. So that is something that I liked, which is it is easy for for others to give advice, but it's a sign of respect to that person who gave advice to take that advice and really turn that into action, right? That's what you did, Ravi. So I was inspired and I made this note in that book. So on an everyday basis, if you start listing down the things that you like and admire into a person, and suddenly that's a very rich it's a very rich list of things that you want to do. Two things happen. One, subconsciously many of these things starts to rub off in your own life even without you knowing it. And second, you can consciously say that I like this, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to pick up a StreamYard, I'm going to make that into a pro version, I'm going to start doing these sorts of live YouTube video interviews, right? So that's something that's been very helpful for me.
Correct. So, for the audience who might think that you have the privilege of time to take on so many projects, I'm sure you have a family, you have 2 kids to take care of, people have a full-time job. This might look like a privilege that you can do so many projects, you can write books. My wife had a question to ask you, and she said, just ask him how much time is he able to give to his wife or to his kids, because my wife complains because of all of my extracurricular activities after work. She complains that I am unable to devote time to her, which is true. My question is, does it screw up your balance, or you have ways to manage it?
Yeah. So I'll absolutely kid you not. That it sometimes doing multiple things, especially, for example, I decided to become a professional speaker in addition to running my digital consulting business. And that would mean that if my passion is to go speak globally, and to make that speaking engagements pay for itself, clearly that means that following that passion means traveling to other countries to speak. Consequently, it also means that you're away from your family. Likewise, farming. If I have to go to my farm, which is 3.5 hours away from Chennai, that's a city where I live, and my farm is in a small little village 3.5 hours, which means that it's time away. So I found the trick, and the trick is to start to imbibe your family into many of the projects that you're doing, right? And that's where I found the secret sauce. So, for example, whenever I would get speaking engagements, and if there is an anniversary or a special date that really comes in, then I would speak with the conference organizer and tell them that, listen, I would accept to come if you can also accommodate my wife, which means that can you pay for her airfare, and can you also book me a double room instead of a single suite that can accommodate a couple. And I would take her on some of these journeys. Now, suddenly what happens is that earlier when you had a speaking engagement in another country, it was sort of, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it is time away. I'm still earning money, I'm still living my passion, but now I'm able to couple it with also taking my wife along. And that's great. Second, even the farming thing, now what I would do is so the passion is my interest, right? I want to run a farm. I want to have a self-sustaining organic lifestyle. But it's important to also ensure that your kids and your wife are part of it. Now, every single baby animal that is born at the farm then they are named by my kids. So the kids get to choose the name. The kids get to choose what animals we're going to get and what animals they come here. And when they come, there's so much more ownership for them. They go and take care of the animals, feed them, and they come to the farm. They are more now encouraged, and to come to the farm. My dad, for example, loves tinkering with cars. So we built a very nice workshop, a shed behind the farmhouse for him to really follow his passion. And now he finds the farm very, very fascinating. He's out there. So likewise, try and find the things that your family is passionate and see if you can interconnect and make it into a family project as against just a project that is out there. So, for example, the company that um, I run a digital consulting firm. My passion really lies in sales, and my passion lies in strategy and customer interaction. Right? So that's where I really thrive. That's my strong point. I really suck at accounting. I'm not very good in finance. I'm not very good in administration. So my wife comes and takes care of that because that is her strength. She's very good in finance. She's very good in all the rudimentary things, in the admin related work, and in HR and hiring. So she powers that part of it. Now suddenly she has enough skin in the game. So the trick is that I would completely agree that if it's not addressed consciously, it can mean lesser family time. But the trick is to tweak little things to make sure that they're also part of the game, and suddenly it becomes a lot more inclusive, and consequently, your family time really, really goes up as well.
Do you share a new idea with your family before you commit to it? Is like, for example, a farm is something that I'm sure you would have to get a buy-in from your family because everybody's life would impact with such a big commitment, isn't it?
Yeah. So the trick, what I do is that I don't share things with my family until I've really firmed up on that idea that I'm absolutely passionate about pursuing it, right? Because I'm very early in life, not just with family, but in everything else in life, I've realized that if you're not firm, then it's very easy for you to flutter through according to what people want or people's advices. So I'm very clear. So if I want a farm, I want a farm, right? Only when after I've firmed up will I go and tell my family that, hey, this is my idea, this is my passion. And I would encourage them and I would explain why. If they still have a very, very strong reason why I shouldn't do it, then I'm open enough to take that. Then I would then put the pros and cons, and I would then take my call. But I would be very firm. So, for example, in 2010, I went on this experimental basis of experimenting with my hair. So in 2010, I had long hair. I would have a ponytail. For a long time, I wanted to have, but I didn't even try. So 2010. So in 2011, I had the moochwala, which is just like how the police guys have. I would have that. In 2012, I had a full beard going on. So I found it interesting. I said, experiment around. And then because of COVID-19, all salons are closed. Now, even if I want to have a haircut, I cannot go to the salon. And then I realized, hey, this is actually the 10th anniversary of me having a long hair. I decided, what the heck? So in 2020, I'm going to grow long hair back. I may not have the same tress as what I had 10 years back, but who the hell cares? So then I told my family that, guys, this is what I'm going to do. They sulked, but hey, they're fine with that as well. So that's a trick that I've kind of worked it out.
Let's talk about designing life, planning your life. You talked about many projects and projects that you pick here and there, and you have annual bucket list as well. Do you have a long-term plan, like what you want to achieve in the next 5 years, or directionally at least, or the next 10 years? How do you want to shape the rest of your life? Some people do not have that long-term vision. They would like to be pulled by a vision, but they do not want to write it down concretely, because that actually kills the excitement. They want to be pulled in a direction, but not exactly how. What's your way of designing your life?
Yeah. So every year at my farm, it's a I want to create the Shangri-La, right? It's a beautiful farm. It's green. It's very aloof. There's not a single person in the kilometer radius around. So, and at that farm, every year I host a retreat, kind of like the life reset retreat that you do, but slightly different, Ravi. Is what I do is I get in really highly motivated people for an event called the Bucket List Boot Camp. This is completely off grid, off site, and it's kind of off grid, meaning that there's as little distraction as possible. There's no TV, there is no radio, there is no internet, there is no newspaper. It is just 3 days of just highly focused effort in us trying to find out what are our long-term goals. And this bucket list boot camp is focused on figuring out what is our 20-year goal, 30-year goal, 40-year goal, right? Because we are very good at doing these yearly goals. The New Year resolution is a classic example. Hey, what do I want to do for 2020? That's easy. You can crack this up. You sit down, you plan it out. But very rarely do we really think long term. Like for example, if somebody in job interviews, when somebody says, where do you see yourself 10 years in the future? Oh my goodness, that's such a such a cliched question. And almost always we wing that answer out, right? We wing it. Most of us, we are unclear on what we want to do 10 years from now, 20 years from now, honestly, right? And the reason is because it needs to be thought through. It needs to be analyzed, and more importantly, it needs to come from your heart, and that sincerity of what you want to accomplish needs to happen. So that's precisely what the bucket list bootcamp is meant to do. And you would know this, Ravi, that because you host Life Reset, it is also a brilliant way for you to learn. I've been a professor for 18 years and I teach digital marketing. And one of the best things that I've learned is, as a teacher, as a professor, you are forced to learn, right? Because if you don't, students can smell bullshit from a mile away. And that forces you to learn and forces you to do research. And when you're the host of an event like a Life Reset, or if you're like a bucket list boot camp, I need to do my homework as well. And so it becomes like an yearly exercise for me to revisit my long-term goals. What do I want to do in 5 years? What do I want to do in 10 years? So the way how I do this is fairly simple, Ravi. I actually write down my bucket list, right? I write down all the things that brings me joy, all the things that I want to accomplish. And then it automatically they fall into some of these projects would be a 20-year goal, some of it would be a 10-year goal, some of it would be a 5-year goal, some of it would be a 1 week that I can accomplish within a week. So it kind of automatically just falls into those buckets.
I would like to take it a bit deeper about bucket list. And I've seen this people that most of them, when they are asked to write a bucket list, it's mostly incremental. Okay, they most often they do not reimagine their future. It's like an incremental path wherein they are a developer now, and they would be a senior developer in a few years, and then they would be a manager. They are actually not reimagining or rehashing or completely reinventing themselves, and they find it difficult. And also the goals are not very audacious. It's not everybody writes, I want to be a millionaire in the next 5 years. And this is something that I try to imbibe in the youngsters who are much more easily moldable, and they can actually rethink their life because they're still young. The possibility is big. So are your goals the big, hairy, audacious goals? Are they incremental goals? How about your the team that joins you with this retreat that you talked about? How do you ensure, first of all, there's no one way to live, right? I mean, you would not judge somebody if he has smaller goals. So what are your ways to ensure that you have a good set of goals in your next 1, 2, or 5 years? And what
Yeah.
is an ideal goal setting way for people?
Yeah, very simple. All you have to do is just make sure that you apply certain metrics to those. Um, is this accomplishing this? Will this bring me happiness? Will I be proud of myself if I accomplish this goal or even attempt to do this? Will it enhance my life, quality of my life, and the people around me? Will it help me make more money so that I can feed in some of these? I can reinvest the energies into some of the projects that I'm doing. Will it challenge me out of my comfort zone, and that makes my life more spicier? So when you apply some of these metrics, then it becomes far more easier to crack. So this could be either work related or family related or anything else. I think some of these has really been very helpful. I don't sit with a metric with an Excel sheet, fill in and fill up all these and do a tick marks. I don't. But most of these kind of comes through the gut, and you can almost feel that enthusiasm when you think of it. Let me give you an example. So during this COVID period, actually, not even during the COVID period. Earlier, about a year ago, I would go for walks in my neighborhood, and during these regular daily walks, I would every day meet an old man. He's probably in his 90s. He's hunched over. I mean, which means that he's really got his back, he's hunched over, very frail, but every day he would go to the market and buy vegetables. He lives alone in a small little room. He would sweep the road in front of his house. He would actually put the rangoli, the kolam, and I was very curious that every single day that as I go through, I would really admire him. And that even at this old age, he's not just vegetating away, but he's actually doing physical stuff. And then one day I went over to him and said that, you know what, I really have to appreciate you for being very physically active even at this old age, even though you're very frail. And I got to have this small talk, and imagine my surprise, Ravi. Imagine my surprise that during the conversation, I found that he was the personal assistant of Mahatma Gandhi for 2 years. He was quite young when he was a personal assistant, and he actually stayed in Ahmedabad, the one that is next to the river. I forget the place, right? The very popular place where Mahatma Gandhi would stay. He actually stayed with Mahatma, and
Sabarmati,
suddenly, what's that?
Sabarmati Ashram,
What ashram is that again?
Sabarmati Ashram, Sabarmati.
Sabarmati ashram. That's correct. That's absolutely correct, right? Um, and I was interestingly, it was 2 years back that I actually, when I went for a speaking gig in Ahmedabad, I took the time out to go to Sabarmati Ashram. And I was like, suddenly I'm 1 degree of separation away from Mahatma Gandhi. Right? When I shake hands with this old gentleman, it's the same hand that shook hands with Mahatma Gandhi at one point in time. And holy cow! I mean, suddenly these are things that really brings suddenly joy and inquisitiveness. So I went and told him that during this lockdown period, I was thinking of what are all the things that I can really keep myself interested, right? So day before yesterday, I went to his house. I was very conscious that he shouldn't go, during this COVID period in time. I stood outside his house on the road. That I told him that, I want to have a more conversations about your experience with Mahatma Gandhi. So can we do that? But I was also very conscious that this is not the right. He's an old man, right? The last thing you want to do is contact. So I told him that once the lockdown finishes, once these things kind of dies down, could you give me about half hour of your time, and I want to have this conversation. So these are things that really brings the joy and happiness. So I forget what the original question was, Ravi, but the one that I really like is to start doing things. I mean, this was something that really spoke to my heart, right? So do you get that flutter of happiness, and does it make you happy? Does it make you very interested, make you inquisitive? Then what the hell, just go ahead and do it. Will this bring me money? Maybe, maybe not, but what the hell does it matter? And this is where I would really want to bring in one of my favorite guys, Derek Sivers. You know him already as well, Ravi. So Derek Sivers is someone who had a chance to meet him twice in person. We are in touch over emails. His book, Anything You Want, is amongst one of my all-time favorite books. It's a very short book, about 60 pages long. You could probably do this while you're waiting at the airport to catch your flight. What's that?
CD Baby.
That's correct. He started a company called CD Baby, and eventually sold it to Amazon, made about $22 million, and went on to donate that to a charity. And now he lives 6 months in every country and keeps uprooting himself to another new country, starts doing different projects. And but one of the chapters, I think he has about 40 plus lessons in his book of entrepreneurial lessons. And one lesson that really stands out as my favorite is what's called hell yeah or no. Right? If there is anything, any new opportunity, if there's any new activity, any new project, if it makes your heart go, hell yeah, oh yes, I love doing that, let me do this. If there's anything else that is lesser than hell yeah, or oh yes, then don't even bother doing it, right? Because when you start saying no, 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 no to a lot of things that is not exciting or that is less exciting in your life, then your life has space for a lot of oh yes moments. Your life is filled with oh yes moments, and then it really starts to make it like super exciting, right? It really starts to make super exciting. So some of these principles as being very, very fruitful for me. I also want to tell you that another incident. So right now, one of my 2020 goals is to be alcohol free. So I've decided not to consume alcohol. I'm 46 years old, but for 45 years, for nearly 20 years, I would socially consume alcohol. I never drink alone, but I would socially in parties with friends. I've definitely enjoyed my my vodka, my beer. During one such drinking session along with my friends, and I'm sure this is probably peg number 4 or peg number 5, when you're sufficiently elevated and you're spirited up. One of my friends said, "Hey, Macha, do you know that our days are numbered?" Right? And you ask, "What the hell do you mean?" I'm sure this is some kind of a drunken saying. And he said, "Do you know that the average life expectancy for Indians is 70 years, or give or take a year or two, right?" And then, so what? Right? And said, "Hey, we are all in our mid 40s, which means that we only have about 20 odd years to live, or 20, 25 odd years to live. So right now I'm 46 years old. That gives me 24 years according to statistics. That means that I have 8,760 days of life left. Uh, and suddenly this brings into perspective that holy heck, our life is actually numbered, our days are numbered. And then you ask yourself, what the heck are we doing with our life? Why do things that others want us to do? Might as well really enjoy things that we want to do. So that was like an aha moment for me. So let's make every day count, right? So these are things that have really made a completely different perspective in my life.
Yeah. So earlier, I was listening to one of your talks, I think it was in Great Lakes, where you talked about that every person should meet somebody who has had a second life, where he has had a near death experience, because that changes your perspective, because you see, and there's a sense of urgency on how you want to live the rest of your life, because you just got a gift for a few more years. I mean, if you look at the palette, the lifespan of a human is still very less. And there are many people who constantly remind themselves of the shortness of life. There is something called memento mori, a ritual that the Stoicist philosophers followed. That was just my last episode on my channel. I did an episode on that, and I have now inculcated in my daily ritual. When I get up in the morning, I first of all thank for my life today, because there are so many people who might not have that day anymore. And because the days are numbered, if you remember that, if you start living that if you die next month, then there is a sense of urgency and a certain appreciation to your life, which we otherwise take for granted. And most people live as if they have unlimited supply of life, and they just fritter away their time and life. And that is something that you don't have. So there is a sense of urgency, definitely, with people like you, with people like Rajesh Sethi. And then I was having a conversation. This is something that I wanted to know from you. There's definitely not one way to live a life, right? I was having a conversation. I usually motivate a lot of youngsters to think big. And then there is this young girl who says, what if I do not want to think big? What if I want to practice contentment? And she put me in a spot, and she gave her example of her father, who has a simple life and has a very honorable life, lived with given respect, taken respect, but a simple life. Okay. And she gave me that example, and then I told her, yeah, it is completely up to you. There's no judgment at all. It's completely how you want, what is the vision of your life, decides the decision how you want to live your life. And that's why I wanted to ask you, what are your criterias for your goals? And you said it should give you happiness, it should make you feel proud, and it should increase the quality of your life. And it is for you to decide what kind of goals you want to pick. For example, I pick Bhag goals, big, hairy, audacious goals, because my mission of life is, before I die, I want to exhaust every trace of my potential. So I want to push. I do not want to die with a burden of unfulfilled potential. And that's my mission. And that's why I push bigger, bigger goals. But if somebody does not have that mission and he wants to have a contented and happy life, which is fine for him. So would you agree to this kind of an analogy? And or do you think that everybody should have a big, hairy, audacious goal?
Yeah, one thing I absolutely agree with you, Ravi, is that every one of us are very different, and it's perfectly okay for us to have our own measurement of success. Um, the problem happens is that when you start to measure yourself according to what society has done. So, for example, if you go and ask the word, who are the most successful people, more often than not, people will tell you the richest people, right? The people, the billionaires, the guys, uh, the CEOs. You would think that they are the ones who are very successful in life. While that is one metric, but there are so many other on metrics of success that you can measure by, and it's important for us to really individually figure out what that is. So when the girl came and asked you that, hey, if for her the metric of success is just contentment and happiness and doing things on a smaller scale, that's perfectly fine in my opinion. So this COVID-19 lockdown is another classic example, right? There are so much messages that are now being pushed, saying that, hey, this lockdown, you got to make the most out of this. You have more time on your hands, and this is the time for you to do things that are amazing, and you're going to be successful. And suddenly this starts to put kind of pressure. Holy cow, others are writing books, and Ravi has written 2 books during this lockdown period. And others have launched this YouTube channel. That guy has gone and pivoted his life completely. And what the hell am I doing? I need to match up, and I need to speed up. Um, Sometimes we can get ourselves enamored by comparison and by really wanting to make the most of opportunities. Um, Again, it's very subjective. If that is what fires your boat, if that is what that's perfectly fine. But the minute it starts to become like pressure, the minute that you start to compare yourself with others and wanting to do better than others, I think that is where the joy gets sucked out of it. So in our I've known people who have said that I've now realized the maximum thing of actually sleeping the longest I've ever in my life. I've now read many books that I've always wanted to read. I think that's okay. It's okay for you to not be sucked into the rat race of having to do this. But at the same time, if having a big, hairy, audacious goal and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, wanting to do this is what really makes you happy, that is fine as well. So the only metric of success or measure of happiness I would lay a measure that you need to compare is how are you feeling? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling fulfilled? Are you feeling accomplished? No matter what is it that you've really got out to make, I think that's what I would really recommend.
Excellent. For all the people who are professionals, have a full-time job, they might be looking at you with awe, and also with envy, because they don't have the time to pursue all these projects. They might not be able to travel. So do you think an entrepreneurial life gives you the freedom to chase or live life on your own terms? Is that a valid statement to say?
It's definitely a very valid statement to say. That's because I've been a 9 to 5 professional for half my professional career, and now I'm an entrepreneur. Definitely being your own boss and you being the ultimate decision authority on how you need to spend your time without the need for somebody breathing down your neck definitely has given me this freedom. In fact, that is one of the main reasons why I decided to turn an entrepreneur, decided to leave a fairly plush, comfortable corporate job. But that being said, you people shouldn't misconstrue my statement. That has worked for me. That's because I have multiple projects, I have multiple interests, so I needed that ability to do multiple things, and the corporate life did not give me the freedom. However, that is not a cookie cutter solution, right? So I know that there are people who are in very senior positions, in C-suite positions and CXO level positions, who are masterfully um, figured their way out on pursuing their corporate career at the same time following their outside passions in life. So the answer, which I'm very consciously I want to say, is that you don't necessarily have to become your own boss and become an entrepreneur for you to enjoy life, right? So that's one of the things that I want to do. I want to be very clear in saying, given whatever is the scenario, given the constraints and the possibilities of what life gives you, can you make the most out of those in order to seek more happiness and joy and fulfillment? I think that's where the trick really lies.
Excellent. And if somebody wants to get into the step into entrepreneur from his secure job, does it take a special person to succeed? Does it take a special person to navigate uncertainty? or anybody can take the plunge and figure it out? What is your take on entrepreneurism as a decision for everybody?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest reason that holds people back is usually a commitment or the surety of having a paycheck, money landing in your ATM account automatically. Um, that's the beauty of having a full-time job or a corporate job, is just that your life um, is very secure. It's very well planned out. Um, One school of thought is because there is so much peace in your mind, that knowing that you don't have to worry about your food and money and stuff, that gives your mind a rich, fertile place for you to think of very innovative new ideas, right? Um, Another school of thought is that when you turn an entrepreneur, then you're the ultimate decision maker, and you can make time for all the things that you're doing. So it all depends on the mindset of what you're doing. But for me personally, I can tell you my own journey of how it happened, and that could possibly give others an idea. When I started to realize that my corporate life was constructing, and I didn't see a very um, rosy, happy future, I decided to come out of the rat race. And the way how I did was I started to moonlight, which is while still holding a full-time job. During evenings and during weekends, I would start to do projects, commercial projects. This is, of course, I'm very blessed to work with a boss that I really admire, and we had some very good equation. I was very honest and told him that I'm doing things on the side, which is according to contract, meaning that as long as I don't work for any other direct competitor, and the fact that he was such a beautiful, honest gentleman who gave me the liberty to do it, I was able to pursue. And once I know that when I move out of my job, my wife will not go hungry, my kids will not go hungry. As long as that safety net has been set, that's when I spoke with my boss and I eased myself out of my corporate life, and there was no turning back. Now I can tell you with absolute surety that there is no way in my life that I would ever go back to a 9 to 5 job. Like
Okay.
never. That's because I've figured out the positives out of this. That the positives far outweigh the negatives. It is not an easy life, I can tell you. That on the first of every month, while we were looking out, while I was on a job, I was actually seeing money coming to the bank. The first of every month as an entrepreneur is the worst day of the month, because that is where the money really goes out, either as salaries or as payments to vendors and various other things, right? And it's never easy, right? For example, when challenging times like COVID, the startup founder or the CEO is the worst hit. It's the most stressful. That's where the much of the burden really starts to come and accumulate. You have to take very hard decisions. It's not the best place to be present, honestly. But that's part of the game. But I've realized that the positives of being an entrepreneur far outweigh the negatives, and hence this is the life that I really foresee myself doing the rest of my life.
So the important thing is that transition, the stress to manage it, to plan your finances and stuff like that. Walk us through that experience of yours. I'm sure it was not all rosy. I'm sure you didn't figure it out. Everything, all the past that I gloriously we talk about today hasn't been an easy journey, right? So why don't you
No.
share? Why don't you share with us those initial days of transitioning from a secure 9 to 5 job, when you had secure salary on a first of every month, and suddenly the next month is when you are free? How did you navigate those times? Was the money easy? Had you moonlighted to an extent where the secure money was already in? Did you have rough days? Just share some of those experiences.
Yeah, I want to say three things that really made it easy for me. Right. The first one was, now that I've made a decision to move out. Uh, I started to save up money, which means that even for the next 3 months, if I did not even earn a single rupee, I would still be able to hold fort, right? So that was number one. Though, if I were to give you now advice, I would say plan at least for 6 months, because 3 months I took a leap of faith, but I would say 6 months. There's one of my mentors and one of the person who I really look up to life, CK Ranganathan, who's the founder of this company called Cabin Care. He actually says 10 months. You need to save up at least 10 months before you make the jump. But it kind of varies from one person to person. So that was the first one, right?
10 months
Which
of
is
10 months of expenses or 10 months of salary?
Yeah. So 10 months of meeting all your expenses, even if there was no one single income coming in.
And did you have any burden of property or house loans and stuff like that, or was that taken care of before?
Yeah, that's an important point I wanted to come up to. So I'm going to save up that answer. It's a very, very important, pertinent point that you raised. So I want to save that up one particular. In case if I forget, just remind me, Ravi. The first one is just savings, right? That's number one. Number two, I started to sign up for sites like Scriptlands, which is the equivalent of what is now Upwork.com. Then you have Guru.com, various other freelance sites where we could take up projects and really work, and that was getting in some money. That was getting in money in dollars, and that was helpful. I was hosting a podcast show way back, and that was getting some money. So bits and pieces, but some money was coming in. So I knew that there was cash flow that I was spending. So I think finding moonlighting jobs, I found it to be very easy in my transitioning phase. The third, I think, is very, very important, is the support of your spouse. It's not support of family. So it's not your parents, it's not your in-laws, it is specifically your spouse. And you need to have the backing. In my case, Sujani, my wife, was extremely understanding and supportive. And she was rooting for it completely, like 100% kind of a support was out there. So that was that gave me a huge confidence, right? My kids were too small, so I couldn't take their consent or their understanding. But now they're now in their teenage years, and now for whenever I take big decisions, I involve them as well. But making sure that your wife really understands and supports you in this decision is super important. I think these three kind of helped me in my transitioning phase. The fourth, which is the point that you really raised, is many times we are forced to stick to our corporate job is because of the EMIs. Right, you would have bought a house, you would have bought a car, you would have bought. So that is one of the things that I've really very consciously started to do, Ravi, is not to get into long-term debt. Or even if we get into long-term debt, our focus is on, can we get out of that debt very, very quickly. So for example, earlier we bought a house, and our single-minded goal was that, hey, we have to get rid of, we have to pay up. Even though we have taken a 20-year loan, or was it a 30-year loan, we didn't even bother, because our goal was that it can be paid off as quickly as possible, which means that we made sacrifice. We cut down on our annual vacations. We cut down on our number of times that we would go watch movies in theaters or go and eat outside until this was done. So last year we bought our second home, and we decided that until we finish up all our things, we will cut down on all. We were able to do the same thing as well. I have a 10-year-old car, and I'm not bothered. It's not fancy. It is dented up. It's an old Hyundai Accent. When I go to conferences or when I go to parties, my car is the least looked at when you compare with the Mercs and the BMWs of other car. I've made peace with myself. The bike that I have, is the same age as my elder daughter. It's 17-year-old bike. I've made peace with myself that as long as my bike takes me from point A to point B perfectly, I'm okay with that. It is not the KTMs of the world, it is not the Hondas of the world, but that's perfectly fine. So I think I've made peace with that. That I want to live a life of simplicity. I want to live low footprint life. So that's something that I've decided that I will live a very simple life. I will not get into too much extravagance. That's not to say that there are other ways how I spend money. Like, for example, I splurge a lot on buying plants and saplings for my farm. I whenever I travel on speaking engagements, I take the time out to experience other things or that the country offers. So there are expenses, but I'm saying that just consciously being and making sure that your expenses are small makes it life easy. And I can tell you that this has tremendously helped me during the challenges that during COVID-19. When every single one of our clients has been impacted, like every single, much like every other business that has been happening. And hence there are very difficult decisions they had to make, and we had to cut down. We lost some of our business. We had to scale down some of our business. But personally, for me in our life, thankfully, because our decision of living a frugal life has come in, that is now helping us tremendously. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is so important because most people think they cannot have freedom because they are in a rat race. There is an artificial rat race. There is keeping up with the Joneses, as they say. The neighbor car is more expensive, so we need to get that car. Or my subordinate has a more expensive car. I am the boss. I should have a more expensive. So it's the rat race that actually sucks the energy and the time and the resources, and then you do not reflect upon what keeps you happy. And if you want to lead a creative life like Kiruba, you still can do it if you actually lead a frugal life and derive happiness and joy about all the other exciting things that you're able to do, isn't it? So your travels, your public speaking gigs, your all the exciting, the farm that you're doing, all this derives much more satisfaction and happiness than going after materialistic positions, isn't it?
You're absolutely right, Ravi. You really hit the nail on the head. Yes.
So let's go through the most exciting part of this conversation. We are already over 1 hour now, so we'll wrap it up in another 25, 30 minutes. And I would not want to miss out on some of your exciting projects that you have picked over your lifetime. You have your Vaksana farms. You had something called MENT project. For a long time, you did Celebrate. Then there was Fail Camp. You had a comics collection project. You have an antiques project that you mentioned about. Kiruba TV was one of it. My mistakes was something that I would like to know. And then the discomfort challenge, which you already mentioned. Now, when we have a short life, how do you decide? And then there are so many projects in your mind, and you also have actually been vocal that you also suffer from a shiny bling syndrome, that you're so curious that so many things hit your mind. How do you commit to a project of all the distractions that you have, that all the things that grab your attention? How do you commit to a project? Because out of your short life, you can only do so much. And when you commit to a project, you have to give a few years of your life. So what are your filters process to go ahead and commit to a project?
Yeah, it's a great question. So typically there are two schools of thought that I've found. One set of thing, which is the one thing project, which is the ability for you to succeed is for you to take that one thing and really, really stay focused on that one thing and not get distracted on anything else. And that's the route for success, right? Which is true. And time again, we've seen this happen brilliantly. However, for me, I realized that I am not that sort of person. I cannot. It's intrinsically, that's just not me. I derive joy in doing multiple things, playing multiple roles. And so, first thing is I've made peace with that. And I've also begun to realize that doing multiple things and juggling multiple activities is not necessarily a bad thing. And once I got to know that, I mean, this is from various people and various books, that then it was really good, that feeling. So now, what I do, Ravi, is that the way how I pick projects is it interesting? Does it make me happy? And can I do this over a long period of time with really no time pressure for me to do, right? So that also makes it very easy. And suddenly you'd be amazed, right? This is what I've found, that we overestimate the things that we can do in a day, and we severely underestimate what we can achieve in a lifetime. Right? So look at our to-do list, right? So we all have this habit of doing to-do list, and we start writing down all the things, at the beginning of the day, and then during in the evening or night, when you evaluate and look at the things, how many of it you've scratched out. Uh, Most times we would reach about 20% or 30%. There's a big chunk of it that is still not left. That's because of an inherent ability for us, our anxiety and our wish for us to really go and do so many things. Um, However, I've begun to realize that once you start taking many of these projects as a lifelong project, you have all the time, and it's just amazing how you are able to do these things. So, for example, one of the projects, that one of the things that I have started to really like is the Japanese concept of ikigai and kaizen, right? And especially kaizen, which is your ability for you to improve yourself like 1% or one tiny bit on an everyday, and get better at the things that you're doing. Now, that's perfect. So if you can apply that to some of your projects, and if you can start doing little by little over a long period of time, that's great. And I begin to realize that the joy of doing things is far, far greater than the joy of getting it completed, right? At one point in time, I one of my goal was to run a marathon. I've run, I think, about three marathons. Well, running a marathon is not entirely true, because I would run and walk and run and walk, but I finished those 42.2 kilometers. And then I started to realize that you finish it, and then you have this high, and then you ask yourself, now what, right? Sure, you can brag about it on Facebook and you can tell people that you have finished it, but where is the joy? Then I started to realize the joy is not so much you completing the marathon, it's about you leading a healthy life. And if you have a healthy body, and that's what really matters, right? So just realizing those facts kind of brought a lot of peace. So your question was, how do I manage all these projects? Number one, one of the good things, and I think a really sensible thing I started to do was that anytime there is a new idea or a fresh thinking, or a very interesting project idea that really comes in, the first thing is jot it down. Capture those ideas and put it up. So I have another book called the Ideas Book. I am never judgmental when it comes to ideas. Is it a great idea? Is it a poor idea? Do I have the money to accomplish this idea? Will people laugh at me when I do? I don't make any judgments at all. I capture every single idea that comes in and I put it up into an idea book. I think that's one of the best decisions I've done. So once you have the list of ideas, then you can kind of whittle through and you can sieve through and pick the ideas that really speak to your heart. I think that is one amazing tip that I would really give, and it's done wonders. Just like how Rajesh Sethi has to think list, which is he makes a list of things that he has to just think through, not necessarily the to-do list that you have to do. Similarly, for me, the thing that has really worked remarkably is just the idea book and the inspiration book where I admire people, the things that really, and the idea book, which is any idea that comes that I quickly write it down. because we also overestimate our memory capacity. It's actually pretty poor. So while the idea strikes, and mostly I've seen that either I'm in the loo or I'm taking a shower or when I'm going out for a walk, these ideas comes and quickly just jot it down.
Excellent. So there could be two kinds of projects. It could be solitary projects, which does not need people's help. For example, you talked about running a marathon. Rajesh Sethi has a project where he does these infographics every day, the idea sketches every day that he has been pursuing. He has created thousands of them till now. And then there are projects which need a lot of help, right? Like I admire Rajesh Sethi because the way he pulls out a project. I call him a master orchestrator because there's so many people around the world that it brings them together and creates the project. So, what are your ways of fulfilling a project which might need a lot of help?
I think I'm a big fan of communities. I'm a huge fan. Um, I have seen, so one of the books that I've written is a book called Crowdsourcing to Eat that explains how deeply passionate I am. I wrote a book about Wikipedia only because that's a classic case of how people can do more than what one individual can do. So Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, I invited him once to come and keynote at a conference I co-hosted here in Chennai, and I invited him to come and stay at my home. So he stayed at my home for 3 days, and during those conversations, I asked him about the founding of Wikipedia, and he gave me a very fascinating story how after 9/11 things really went and he lost all his investor money, and that forced him to go and make his project, his encyclopedia project, into an open source project, and that became the secret of Wikipedia's success. So and I've seen TED example of how Chris Anderson came and open sourced the TED conferences and got TEDx out of it, and those TED talks, YouTube, and that elevated TED to a completely different mode. So I'm a big fan of being very collaborative. So handpicking the right people and coming together is a good way of seeing some of your projects and your dreams and ideas come true. So let me give you this example. So I'm part of the Professional Speakers Association of India, and when COVID-19 happened, one of the industry that really got hit the hardest was the professional speaking industry. Okay, so mind you, for a professional speaking industry, for a professional speaker, you get paid for speaking on stages, on big conferences, and big conferences happen around the world. Now, there are no conferences that happen around the world, right? If you have to go travel, you have to fly. All airlines are now are shut down. All hotels are now shuttered. So there's nothing. Professional speaking has now come to a grinding halt. So, as part of the association, one of the things that we decided was, hey, all of us are from many of us are from different areas. So, 21 of us from the association, from 21 diverse fields, started to put our ideas together on how each one of us are pivoting in our own life. And so we took on this challenge of writing a book in 21 days. So 21 people from 21 diverse fields with 21 ideas of pivot, writing a book in 21 days. And we were able to come up with it successfully. And the book went on to become the #1 Amazon bestselling book for 4 days in the education category. And that's one of our achievements. It was the number 8. It reached out to the highest rank of number 8 of all the ebooks, right? So I want you to now think through this, right? Of all the ebooks on Amazon, it reached briefly a number 8, and now I think it's really fallen deeply down the barrel. But that was one of our thing. Now let's stop for a second. What if this was Kiruba's idea, right? And if Kiruba was to accomplish this, and if I were to write, I would have miserably failed. Right? Writing a book in 21 days, it will not have the diversity of ideas, it will not have the diversity of domains. So one of the success thing was to encompass and build a community, share that vision, make them equally equally riled up and really passionate about this idea, and tap into the wisdom and the strengths of each one of them, marry all this together, project manage it, and then go and launch. I think that was the secret of the book. The book is called Shifting Gears, and that's the secret. And more interestingly, not only um, did it achieve whatever rankings it did, but it's also the joy that it's a collective joy. As a group, we made this happen, and there's tremendous satisfaction out of that. Yeah.
My sister Preeti Pooja, she has a question from Amsterdam. Uh,
Hmm.
she's yeah. The question is, let me just post it on the screen. How to evaluate if a new idea project is worth risking for? There are 10 different things I want to pursue at a given time. How to prioritize the right thing to do? You almost answered that, but if you want to add something more on this particular question.
Yeah. So Pooja, that's a fantastic question. And I'll tell you how I deal with this is that just honor all the 10 ideas and at least give them the respect by just writing it down, right? Later, you can always then judge and you can evaluate on what you can do, what you can't do, because let's face the fact, we only have 24 hours in a day. We have various other commitments. So obviously time is a big factor and you can only do certain projects. Um, Now that you know that you can only do certain projects, let those ideas lie down, and there is this cooling period, um, and then revisit it and look at, and then kind of prioritize and rank on which of these ideas um, is contextually right for this period of time, right? So let me give you this example. I'm in the process over the last 8 months. I'm writing a book called Digital Selling, because that's the topic that I'm working on. But when the shifting gears, when COVID-19 happened and the ability for people to pivot now has become super important, I kind of paused the digital selling book briefly and I quickly powered through on the shifting gears book. And now that that is done, I'm back to the book. But if I was steadfast and said that no, I will only work on the digital selling book and only when it is finished, I will go back to the shifting gears book, then time would have really passed. Then even if I write that, it wouldn't be contextually relevant, or I wouldn't have the enthusiasm to do this. So you have to take that call from the gut, and that's a kind of a good way for you to prioritize. So number one, write down all ideas, all ideas. Number two, give them the cooling period, and three, revisit them and reprioritize them. And once you have reprioritized, make peace with yourself that, hey, even though the other ideas are nice, unfortunately, I won't have the time to do it. So now I will not. Make peace with that. I think that's a kind of a good way for you to handle.
So I will have to make peace with all the questions that I was not able to ask Kiruba. We are already above 90 minutes. But there is one question that many of our listeners, watchers actually, have asked. They wanted to know more about the Waxana Farms project. I myself am also very curious. So help us share the story of the very from the very beginning on how the idea shaped to the execution and what was your vision, and because it looks like a very huge effort, so how did it all come into play? But before that, let me play that bit. I have that, but yeah, let me first share the screen. I forgot that I have this feature there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Our village is a small, beautiful place. It's blessed with lots of greenery, quaint little huts, cows. It's actually sandwiched between two rivers. And yeah, we have our own version of traffic jams. All volunteers stay in a small farmhouse built on a 9-acre farm. We named our farm Vaksana, which means nourishing fertile land. Every morning, we wake up before the sun, go for an early morning walk, enjoy the fresh, clean air, follow practices, and get a healthy start to the day. We try and stay away from chemical fertilizers, use organic manure instead. We get busy with various farming activities, and we like to use a nice mix of traditional and modern farming methods. The farm work has to be the best form of physical exercise. All that hard work and labor starts bearing fruit during the harvest time. It's so very soul nourishing, producing our own food. And then it's time to beat the heat with a nice cool shower. Ah, the small joys of life. It's time for food. Sometimes my mom and grandma cook, but most times all the volunteers chip in and do group cooking with food harvested right at the farm. The best part of volunteering is getting to meet like minded people who are passionate about organic farming and sustainable living, sharing ideas, exchanging experiences, and inspiring each other. Not to mention the fun parts. It's amazing how people come in as complete strangers, bond at the farm, and leave as close friends. We want to thank everyone who joined us on this wonderful journey so far. We have just begun and have a long.
Wow, that's
I would any day trade this life with the rat race that I am in, and very very inspiring, Kiruba. What you have created, the magic of creating something as beautiful as this is out of the world. And I want you to share what went into this. And many people dream about building something like this; they never are able to execute it. But tell us a bit about how all this happened.
yeah. It's a bit of a sad story, honestly. I'm born into agricultural family, right? Which means that for generations, for 200 years, that I was able to trace back, we've always been in the farming line. But what happened is that after both my grandparents passed away, the interest within farming kind of dropped, which is my dad quit farming, on my mom's side as well, they dropped. So for 30 years, the land was fallow. There's nothing happened. And over the years, we earlier had large tracts of land, but for various reasons of splitting and family divisions and everything, I got to know that we had a couple of acres left in my mom's name, which eventually came over to me. So we only had about 2 acres, and I always had a green thumb. I remember as a kid, I would be planting lots of saplings, and I almost did not even know that we had this land. And I kind of discovered the availability of this land, and that kind of changed the entire perspective. So in 2010, which is about 10 years ago, I started to make some steps. By then, my land was completely outgrown with thorny trees, and it was so I had to clean it up, and I have to really go back and restart almost with a clean board, as you say. And slowly but surely, I started to invest in neighboring lands and pick it up. And now we have about 13 acres. And I built the farmhouse that you saw. That video was shot about, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. It is a lot more greener now. And it's my goal is to really build this into a Shangri-La, into a paradise. That's my vision. So again, my principles are same. I want to make sure that this farm is not just a hobby farm. So I'm very, very clear that this farm will be a place for secondary income. I don't want it to be a white elephant that just sucks away money. It did in the initial times, but now it's starting to pay back. That's number one. That and the second thing is that I derive joy out of doing things. So I've started a food forest. There are some places where we grow food for our home. We have integrated farming, which means that we have cows and sheep and goats and chickens and donkeys. And then there is a timber forest where we grow all types of timber trees, which will be helpful for us. That when my daughters grow up and when they build their home and they can harvest the wood for them to pursue those. So there are multiple needs, but the important thing is self-sufficiency. Can we really stop the food miles, and can we really do things that are available within our land? Can we grow our own vegetables and fruits? Second, can we grow things that are healthy and completely organic? Because we are the ones who are growing this, so we have complete control into what really goes into what we are feeding in. But the third most important thing is the joy of creation. Right? It's amazing when you start to produce, and when you have food that you've grown, when you cook with vegetables that you've grown, when you eat fruits that you have personally planted that seed, and you've seen that grow as a sapling and grow as a tree, and when it flowers and when it finally fruits, and when you pluck that, it's just remarkable. It is not just any fruit, but you've really seen through the entire journey of this fruit, and it gives you amazing satisfaction. As I'm telling you this, I'm really getting goosebumps. So that is something that money can't buy. I think that's where the real joy of the entire farming. And so that's the long story short.
Thank you so much. I would end with just last question. I have a dozen more questions, of course, but I cannot ask all of them. My last question is, what are your upcoming projects in mind, even if they're not shaped? What are your dreams and aspirations, and what are the things that you want to build or create in the next few years?
There are multiple projects. So one of the things I really want to do is I've begun to realize that videos are super important, and it's really going to be the future of digital, right? I've been in the digital industry long enough, and so that is one thing that I really want to learn, which is produce more videos and produce them really good, classy ones. And I'm beginning to take baby steps in learning that. So kudos, Ravi, you're on that journey as well, and I keep looking at your videos. You've done really good for yourself. So videos is one. Second, I want to build a farm cabin, which is a second place for accommodation at my farm. But this time completely using secondhand material, mostly using secondhand material, and mostly built with my own hands. Taking a little bit of professional help, but that is something that I'm really working on. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a fascinating conversation. I haven't enjoyed a conversation. Usually long conversations can get draining, but I am still full. I could go on asking a lot more questions, but I have to be kind to my guests and also all the listeners. I'm sure over the years, Kiruba will have more projects in his kitty and we can get him back again. But this has been a fascinating conversation, Kiruba. Thanks. I cannot thank you enough for your time here.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I completely enjoyed it, and I honestly mean it. And kudos to you for launching the Goals Driven Life. I've already subscribed, and I'm going to really encourage people listening in. Please do that, because Ravi is genuinely passionate about it. He walks this talk, and it's a brilliant opportunity for us to hear and learn from many others. So I definitely encourage that.
Sure. Yes, Kiruba is right. We are going to have some really good, exciting speakers who lead unconventional lives, who have designed lives according to their own terms. And this is something that we can learn. So yes, please do subscribe, because the more people subscribe, the wider audience the message reaches out to. And I also get encouraged when I have a wider audience listening to this. So thanks again, Kiruba, for that word. And hope you have the rest of the weekend nice. And then we will catch up again later. Bye-bye.
Sure. Bye-bye. Bye.